It's very, very interesting. The last part of our, discussion today, I would like to ask you about chivalry code and the
Mm.
values martial arts should teach. You know, the reason is a very, I had with Bob, an instructor from United Kingdom, just a couple of, I think, days ago, a discussion, and he was very worried about the development in Europe, especially in HEMA community, especially in competition, modern competition, that people lack, how can I say it, some value system, right? And
Sure.
Bob was very concerned, and I told him two stories to Bob, and that's why I'm going to ask you, because I know
Yeah.
your school is you put lots of emphasis on that. I personally, when I entered HEMA community, I came from two traditional schools. Now forget Razmov, sorry, the creation, all these things. One was
Mhm.
wrestling. Wrestling in Iran has a long tradition. Wrestling is like karate, like kung fu. It has,
Mhm.
it's a holy way of wrestling. I mean, in wrestling, you should not use cuss words. You should not show happiness when you win. I mean,
Right.
even Olympic wrestling. You know, we know, for example, in Iran, the best wrestler was an Olympic champion, Takhti. Takhti is a wrestler who, in the final of Olympic Games, which is very for Iran is very important in freestyle or Greco, doesn't matter. Iran has very good wrestlers. When he wanted to challenge in the final the Russian, and he saw that the Russian was wearing some bandage around his knee, he didn't grab that knee for a single leg takedown.
Right.
And even when it led to his loss, in Iran, we say, when you when you listen to commentators, the comments on wrestling. I remember one of our wrestlers in Greco-Roman, he was nasty to his opponent, to a Russian. He was not a good guy. And the
Mhm.
commentator said, I really hope our wrestler is going to lose because he's not Pahlavan, he's not a champion. He doesn't
Right.
deserve to win. And when he
Right.
lost, the commentator on national TV live said he deserved it. We don't want to have people like that who disrespect their opponents. And this is the tradition of wrestling in Iran. And then, as you know, possibly you know, I have also black belt in Kyokushin and
Mhm.
Oyama style. And Oyama said, Kyokushin without Budo makes you an animal. It's a full contact
Right.
style. I don't want to have wild animal here. So it means when he was alive, and still is the tradition, but especially when he was alive, when the people won, like the first championship of Kyokushin, no weight class, black belt, every black belt fights against the other. When Sato won, the only thing he did, he was not allowed to show emotions. He just said, os, and you could see some tears in his eyes because he was happy.
Mm.
But os, that's it. But when I came to some HEMA environment, I cannot explain it to you. It was completely different.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? It was, I'm not saying everywhere, disrespect, or not everywhere, but then it was this competition style, maybe. You understand what I mean? Like these
Yeah.
tournaments, you know what I mean? I'm talking about tournament environment of HEMA, right?
Yeah.
I just said, what is going on here, right? So where does that come from? Could you just please pass some
Yeah. I
information
think,
on that?
first I want to say that I think within the HEMA community, in spite of my frustrations at times with certain individuals, I've met more wonderful people than I have people that I wouldn't want to spend time with. But I think culturally, the HEMA tournament community has tended to orient more towards a modern North American style sporting culture. And there is, and this certainly varies between different sports, but a lot of competitive North American sports are have become, I think they've become even more so, more ego driven, and so thus there's more of that, win at all costs. And there's certainly, I think, in American culture, and to a degree in Canadian culture, influenced by that, is like the only medal is the gold medal. And like there's, I think all of those things, I think, really, and then when you grow up in hyper competitive families that are only rewarding you as a child if you win things, I think all those things influence just the sporting culture in general, and I think that's really influenced HEMA a lot. So there is a kind of there can be a structural ego-driven winning is what matters, kind of pressure on those environments. And I'm not a big fan of that. Even though, honestly, when I was a young guy, when I first got into competitions and things, I remember, in my late teens, early 20s, all I wanted to do was beat everybody and show everybody how I was better than them. Like, I definitely had that.
Of course.
Like, and so, I try to keep an empathy for that and appreciation for that. There is a certain place that we can come from, especially young men. And then I honestly had a point in my own development where that became, it actually just stopped giving me any sort of payoff. Like, there's a certain point where you kind of like get to some peak a bunch of times and nothing actually really comes from it. And then you realize that the only thing left over is what you've developed in yourself. And so then I needed to go on a bit of a journey in my own martial development, my own spiritual development, to find out why I was doing this. And what there was to learn from my martial arts practice, and I needed to find something richer from that. And so then I stepped more deeply into the values that I am developing in myself through martial arts, and thus in turn the values that I want my students to develop in themselves through martial arts. And because I feel like that's more enduring, I'm much more interested now, not in creating tournament winners. I'm more interested in creating people that are rich human beings that have rich physical, spiritual, emotional lives, and are strong and resilient in a way that will sustain their martial art and life practice into their 80s and 90s, as opposed to just winning them a few gold medals in their 20s. And that really informed how I teach the martial art too. And I don't turn my students away from tournament environments. In fact, often what I do is I prepare them for them. How do you stay emotionally resilient and hold to your values while doing your best, but also looking after your integrity in that environment? That becomes, to me, the tournament environment is challenging you both, not just martially, but it's also challenging you ethically and spiritually. And so I think if you come into it with that awareness, you can learn things there. But I think there is just that type of win at all cost sporting culture. And I think also, though, that lots of people are finding that dissatisfying. And there is certainly, we're not the only school, and there are many schools that are setting themselves apart from tournaments
Yes.
as their primary thing.
Absolutely. What I was talking about was about this tournament mentality, right? Of course, This was what I was talking about. I just generalized. I was only talking about this tournament mentality within European martial arts, of course.
Yeah, and it's like to me, what I want to see continuing to be created for European martial arts is, I think that the more places there are for people to become excited by, to become to drawn in by, and to explore the art, the better. It's an ecosystem of practice. But if I were to say that anything that I would want to be the base, the heart of it, I would want the practice of, I'd say the traditional art, and I don't just mean traditional meaning like the research art, but I mean more practicing the art based on the tenets and causes that are true to the tradition. And so that means that, why do you practice the art? You as Mancellino said, you practice it for the betterment of self and the preservation of life. And so, that's the reason we practice the art. And so I want my students to be able to apply the art combatively. That doesn't necessarily mean tournaments, but I want them to develop the emotional, mental, and physical resilience to be able to apply the martial art. It is a martial art. But I also want them to have the art as something that they can use just on their own, that you can practice it solo and get joy and pleasure from. They can be a meditation. That it can be something that excites you to research and learn about the history. I want it to have all of those rich purposes behind it. And then to me, one of the things that defines a martial art and a martial artist is that a martial artist is able to able to adapt themselves to different martial circumstances, What makes something a sport is that it is a tailored set of skills applicable to one environment. What makes it a martial art is that it is an understanding of principles that allow you to meet any environment.
Absolutely. Very good. Very good. And your comparison to sporting events is very good. Excellent. I really like it. That makes completely sense. It's a sporting event. Absolutely.
Right.
Which,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Very good. Very good comparison. That's absolutely valid and good.
And I think just one last thing on that. I think some people, you know, when I have interesting discussions with people about these things, some people feel that the only way that HEMA will be able to become popular is if it is as a sport. They feel that the sport route, even some people who that isn't what they care about themselves, they feel like the only way that we're going to get lots of people doing HEMA is if it's a sport, and if you can win medals, and if you can go get a scholarship for it and that kind of thing. And I think that is a way, but I make a comparison to yoga. Yoga is not popular because people are winning gold medals at the Olympics of yoga. And it's actually it's significantly more popular than HEMA. And the same thing, or others like running. Yes, there is sporting running, but the percentage of people that do running so they can compete is infinitesimal compared to the percentage of people that do running because it's a way that they get meditation and physical fitness, etc. And so, you know, again, I feel like there's this broad, I think that the art is limited if we see it only as sport, and that's the only way. I think it's a much greater route to go pursuing as a martial art, with sport as one way you can practice it.
May I, Devon, may I make a comparison, possibly, this maybe helps some colleagues possibly in European martial arts. And this comparison has nothing to do with Persian martial arts and Razmavsar, but may I make this comparison?
Yeah.
I remember when there was a break away from traditional karate. I'm not talking about full contact arts like Shotokan, and so people were really interested, like boxing. So American kickboxing was developed, right? And it was no low kick, nothing. So when American kickboxing but look at American kickboxing without low kicks now, is that you almost don't see it anymore. But I give you two examples. One of them is Kyokushin, which was always with low kick, bare knuckle. Kyokushin, with 10 million people worldwide, didn't survive because of competition. Competition is only 2% of Kyokushin because it has 39 katas. These 11 million people do not compete these full bare knuckle. There's a tiny minority because learning 39 katas of Kyokushin, you know what it means, 39 katas, you know what, to reach black belt, it's not easy, right? So, and then it means that even when we come to Muay Thai didn't survive only because of competition. Many Muay Thai fighters, when they retire, they go to the traditional Thai martial arts, which also, you know, that weapon base and self-defense base, and it has a culture behind it. So I just make this comparison because both of them have a very competitive environment, but is a tiny minority. The rest of it is culture. And that's why they have survived. And coming back to American kickboxing, it didn't survive. And many people ask me why, because the audience lost interest. I said, guys, American kickboxing didn't survive, not only because of the audience. It's because what you don't realize, Muay Thai and Kyokushin, they have a traditional element into that. Competition is a small part of it. If I may make this comparison, which possibly it will explain. You know?
I think that's fantastic comparison to make. And I think, you know, part of it again has to do with, you know, television culture and things in North America too, that people, and celebrity culture, is that it puts a lot more priority on the sporting event because that's where the celebrity comes from. And there's a big fascination with celebrity. And I think that's another part of that focus, even within HEMA. If you want to become a HEMA celebrity, the environment where that celebrity is easiest to achieve is through tournament. And whereas, you know, to gain celebrity through your martial achievement, through your training and education, that's a much longer road, you know.
It is.
And you know, as you know, I think this is also interesting too, you know, the people that you and I might revere in a martial arts context, those people often, they are not necessarily as known by the general public They're people who are revered by other experts because we have a better sense of what an expert looks like. And so we're looking at a sort of a bigger picture. And so again, celebrity, you can be just a particularly fierce athlete. You don't necessarily need to have a rich martial arts knowledge to do well in almost any martial art competition environment. And so that type of celebrity is a little easier to find.
Absolutely, I fully agree. At the end of the day, it was really beautiful. Thank you very much for showing your knowledge and your weapons techniques you showed. I'm sure many of our viewers are going to love that. They always want to see things, and also your explanations, your background, your school. We are going to have a link to Devon's school and also the way you can contact him. And so at the end of our interview, do you want to add something to our discussion today, Devon?
Thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure. I am a big fan of steeping yourself in martial traditions and learning from all different cultural backgrounds. I've valued the time that we got to spend together exploring the connection of Persian martial arts and European martial arts. I love that these things exist. And certainly, if people are looking to find out more about my work, I have a book on Italian Rapier that you can find, which is the Introduction to Italian Rapier, DVD for both Italian Rapier and Longsword. And I have a website, which is Duello, DUELLO.tv. And there's tons of courses and things that people can hop into there if they want to learn more about European martial arts.
Oh, sorry, I just completely forgot because I'm always concentrated on martial arts of our channel, and we have so many researchers on this channel as well. Could you please explain about the books and articles, your publications, please? I completely forgot that.
Oh, sure, yeah. So my own books are a lot of my work in research has led to trying to make manuals that allow people to access this as a modern practice. And so my Introduction to Italian Rapier manual is about connecting with the Italian rapier tradition from the foundation of that art. And it follows most closely to the traditions of some Renaissance era fencing masters, Rodolfo Capoferro, Nicoletto Giganti, and Salvator Fabris. And it teaches the foundation of how to use the weapon alone, but synthesized as a modern approach. I'm a big fan of being, I want to teach, how I pursue European martial arts is as a modern practitioner, training a martial art that has a rich tradition. And so I'm still thinking about it from that modern perspective. And then my other publications are Introduction to Italian Rapier DVD and Introduction to Italian Longsword DVD. Which are all available through Freelance Academy Press. And then I do a lot of writing about both research, but as well as about fighting psychology, about body mechanics, about tactical decision-making, and also a lot about training and mastery. I think that one of the things you need to learn about, and you get to learn about when you're pursuing mastery in a martial art, is what it is to pursue the long and challenging road of getting good at something. And I think that in itself is a really interesting psychological, emotional, spiritual journey. And so I write a lot on the journey of mastery. And you can find all of that on duello.tv. That's where I put my blog articles. And that's also where you can find I have over 400 video lessons on European martial arts. And some of them are available, there's tons just available for free. So you can sign up there, or you can become a subscriber and get access to training basically from there's all the content you need to go, you'd need a good teacher there with you, but you can do a lot on your own from apprentice level up to provost level, all in those materials.
And can people come to you and take online lessons, Devon?
You can, yeah. So yeah, through duello.tv, there's soon there will be opening a whole online portal of live instruction, so you can access live instruction. I do private instruction through online lessons as well. And that's not just a pandemic thing. I actually have students around the world that I've been working with for years online. And I think, it's impossible to learn a martial art exclusively from a distance relationship with somebody. It's an art you have to feel and touch. But especially if you can get some opportunity to meet up with good teachers in person, then online you can make a tremendous amount of strides. And one thing I often stipulate too is, as you know, even in normal times, if you're really passionate and committed to learning a martial art, 80% of your practice is probably still solo.
Yes.
Because you just don't have a partner across from you 100% of the time. And
Absolutely.
so you need to spend so much. And, you know, the other thing I think of is if you're really dedicated to getting the most out of your practice, I want you to do everything you can on your own, so that when you get together with a partner, the time you spend with the partner is most meaningful. And so your solo time is where you're learning how to, while you're conditioning yourself. A wise man, meaning meaning Manucher, said conditioning is the first martial tool. And so I really love that you said that. And so, you know, conditioning is something you've got to do on your own, and you can certainly get guidance about how to do that well in ways that are healthy and will build you towards your martial art goals. But also your coordination, your capacity to hold fidelity, and your ability to do techniques in your martial art can be trained solo very, very effectively. And your just depth of understanding, and your, you know, one thing I say is, if you can't do a technique on your own, you certainly won't be able to do it with a partner.
Yes, absolutely.
So there's a lot that can be done online. And so I do teach all that way, through both videos, but also through live instruction.
Well, thank you very much for taking part in our, to be here on our channel, Razmavsar TV. It was a pleasure, really. Thank you very much, Devon. And I wish you a nice day. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, you too. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
My pleasure.